dark. Red and blue views, truth in the middle. No script, just thought raw and a little civil. Every question's got layers, so we peel back facts. From the real to the surreal, we don't hold back. Voices collide where ideas ignite. You tuned in, now step into the fight. This is more than talk, this is thought that counts. Welcome to the feed where the signal mounts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into a pretty intense recent online panel discussion.
Oh yeah, the OTW Unfiltered one.
That's the one. The Culture Clash Chronicles. Seriously, imagine a kind of digital arena.
Yeah.
You got all these different personalities, some quite well known in their online spaces, all gathered together.
Right, for a conversation.
Well, yeah, it started as a conversation, but it quickly went in some wild directions. We're talking accusations, personal stuff, even like debates about values and spirituality.
It sounds like a lot packed into one event. A real unfiltered look, like the title says.
Exactly. So our mission today is really to navigate through all that, try and pull out some key insights about, online conflicts, this whole accountability question online, and maybe even that search for meaning that seems to pop up even in the middle of all the, chaos.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just like polite disagreement, was it? We saw actual allegations flying around.
Okay.
Heated arguments, and yeah, like you said, this surprisingly deep, sometimes kind of unsettling look at what actually drives people online.
It's a really dense source material. If you've even glanced at it, you might feel a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, like wading through something pretty thick.
Or like you've walked into the middle of season 5 of a drama you've never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know the backstory.
But, even in that apparent chaos, you start seeing patterns, right, about how people interact online, especially when things get heated.
Definitely.
So, okay, let's try and unpack this. Maybe start with what feels like the central thing, the online conflict itself and this constant demand for accountability.
Right. The whole discussion is just littered with accusations. You've got claims of theft aimed at someone called Crispy, assertions that another person, Big Lack, isn't being truthful.
Yeah.
And just this general kind of air of suspicion, people throwing around terms like grifting or just being an attention seeker.
It's the usual online battlefield lexicon, in a way.
It is. But what's really interesting isn't just that they made accusations, but the different ways people seem to approach this idea of accountability.
Yes. Okay, so the host of the panel, OTW, he seemed to position the whole thing as a space to potentially sort things out, resolve issues.
That was the stated intention, yeah. To try and avoid direct attacks, offer a platform for dialogue.
So a kind of attempt at framing it constructively.
Crucial framing, I think, aiming for some kind of maybe reconciliation.
Yeah.
But then you had other people on the panel with a much more, confrontational approach.
Right. Actively going after what they saw as due accountability.
And often really hammering on the need for proof, for evidence. The famous receipts.
Ah, the receipts. You always need the receipts online, don't you?
It seems so. And that really highlights something important about online fights, doesn't it? This whole burden of proof. Like, what counts as real evidence when things can be screenshotted, clipped, taken out of context so easily?
It's a huge challenge. And it underlines how, I guess, truth is negotiated online now. Without those traditional gatekeepers, verifiable proof becomes king. And it's also fascinating how quickly it escalates into really morally loaded language.
Oh, definitely.
You mentioned grifting, but then you hear things like someone selling their soul or even being called a devil.
Those terms popped up.
It shifts from just disagreeing about actions or content to these really heavy moral judgments.
Precisely. And while, obviously those terms carry a lot of weight and maybe aren't always meant completely literally.
Sure. Hyperbole is common online.
Right. But their use really shows the intensity of the judgments being made. It's really important for us and for you listening to understand we're just observing this language being used.
Yeah. We're noting the different viewpoints, the accusations made on the panel.
We're not taking sides here or saying whether these incredibly charged accusations are valid. Not at all. We're just trying to understand how that kind of rhetoric that kind of language, actually works within these online clashes.
Okay, good point. So maybe shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the why. The motivations behind creating content in the first place. This panel seemed to really bring that tension to the surface.
What tension is that?
Between, people who seem to almost need the drama, maybe for views, for engagement.
Right. Chasing the algorithm, maybe?
Versus those who claim they want to do something more positive or meaningful. It feels like a constant push and pull in these spaces.
It really does. And what was quite revealing, I thought, was the range of self-awareness on display.
How so?
Well, some people seem to openly admit, controversy drives clicks. It gets engagement.
Okay, sort of leaning into it.
While others seemed almost, oblivious to their own part in stirring things up. Even while they're saying, oh, I'm above all this drama.
Right. That gap between seeking the spotlight but claiming you're detached from the messiness, that's such a common online thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much is conscious performance and how much is genuine belief or just ingrained behavior?
Yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. It almost feels like it creates its own feedback loop.
Totally.
The panel even touched on this, didn't they, with that phrase, metaversal prisons?
Yeah, that jumped out at me too. This idea of being sort of trapped in these never-ending online conflicts.
It's a pretty powerful image, actually. It describes how these dramas can just become so addictive, so all-consuming.
That phrase, metaversal prisons, it's a strong metaphor, isn't it? For how these online cycles can just trap people, this loop of negativity, needing validation, fighting back.
Keep them hooked.
It makes you think about the underlying psychology. Yeah. What needs are actually being met, even if it's in a really unhealthy way, by constantly being tangled up in this stuff.
Yeah, what are people really looking for online? Because it wasn't all conflict, was it? Amidst the clashes, there were these other moments, more personal reflections.
There were, yeah. Some unexpected introspection.
People talking about their own, growth or taking some responsibility for things they'd done, even just saying they wanted a more peaceful online life. It wasn't just shouting matches.
No, definitely not. And those moments, they provided a really important counterpoint to all the drama. There was that mention of slave morality.
Right. What was that about in this context?
Well, it's a complex philosophical idea, but here it seemed to be used to suggest, perhaps, that some of the negativity comes from a place of feeling powerless, like resentment, reacting against others out of a sense of maybe frustration or perceived injustice.
Okay, so suggesting there's a deeper psychological layer to some of the attacks, not just surface disagreement.
Exactly, that it might be rooted in these deeper feelings.
And then things took an even sharper turn, didn't they, into really personal beliefs?
Yeah, suddenly we're hearing discussions about spirituality, faith, people's core values.
Very different views on figures like Jesus, concepts of God. People were debating interpretations of religious texts. It felt quite surprising in the middle of an online drama panel.
It really highlights how fundamental these beliefs are for people, doesn't it? And how in these online spaces, which can feel anonymous but also very charged, these deeply held values can suddenly become flashpoints, points of connection for some, but major division for others. Like that whole debate around selling one's soul again, but tied specifically to online actions, it shows people applying these, moral and spiritual yardsticks to what happens in the digital world.
It really drives home that idea that words online, they have real weight, they have consequences.
Yeah, the whole discussion kind of underscores that, doesn't it? That these interactions aren't just happening in a void, they impact people, for better or worse.
And it was also striking how differently people seem to measure success in this online world.
How do you mean?
Well, for some, it seemed very focused on maybe financial gain or metrics.
Follower counts, likes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. While for others, it seemed to be about more intangible things, influence maybe, recognition, a sense of achieving something else.
That's a great point. Yeah. The perceived power of words online and these really varied ways people define winning or success. It just shows how complex these digital spaces are to navigate.
Totally. What one person thinks is just, a harmless comment, someone else might take as a deep personal attack.
And yeah, the metrics for success are all over the place. Views, money, community feeling, maybe even, for some, a sense of spiritual rightness in what they're doing.
So, okay, finally, let's touch on community connection,
right,
or maybe the lack of it in this unfiltered setting.
Right.
Because the panel technically brought people together online, but wow, there seemed to be a lot more tearing down than building up.
That's a really critical point, I think. You have this ideal of online communities as places for support, for connection. But the reality we saw here, well, it was often conflict and accusations fracturing any sense of that community. It was really palpable.
And you saw different approaches to handling that conflict too, right?
Absolutely. Some people were talking about needing to offer grace or understanding,
Trying to smooth things over, maybe?
while others were demanding really strict accountability, consequences, even punishment. It reflects this fundamental split in how people think online groups should deal with problems.
Yeah, grace versus justice, almost.
In a way.
Yeah.
And underneath it all, there was this recurring feeling, wasn't there, of people feeling misunderstood.
Definitely. Or feeling like they were being unfairly judged, unfairly portrayed.
It felt like everyone was kind of broadcasting their own story, their own narrative.
But maybe not feeling like anyone else was actually hearing it or validating it.
Exactly. And that feeling of being misrepresented, that just pours fuel on the fire in these unfiltered, high-tension environments, doesn't it?
It leads to defensiveness, digging in your heels.
Right. And the cycle of drama just keeps rolling.
So as we sort of wrap up this deep dive into the OTW Unfiltered panel, what we're left with is, well, a really complex, maybe messy picture of online interaction.
Definitely messy.
It's a space that's just full of conflict, these constant calls for accountability.
Driven by all sorts of motivations.
Yeah, everything from just chasing attention, maybe, to perhaps a genuine, if sometimes misguided, search for meaning or connection.
And it all plays out against this backdrop of online communities that seem, well, pretty fragile sometimes.
Precisely. This raw, unfiltered look really shows the dynamics, doesn't it? The contradictions, the potential for really intense conflict, but also these glimmers of introspection, all happening in this unique digital landscape.
A real microcosm of online life in some ways.
Yeah. And maybe on that note, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Reflecting on all these different motivations we saw, the clashes, that occasional search for something deeper. What does this whole thing tell us about how we communicate, how we connect or fail to connect online? And maybe more personally, how do we, each of us engaging in these digital worlds, how do we find that balance between holding people accountable, allowing for growth, maybe offering some grace, and just resisting that really seductive pull of the online drama?
It's a big question.
It is something worth pondering, maybe long after this deep dive is over.
Mic check, one voice, one spark. From the shadows to the bright, let's light the dark. Red and blue views, truth in the middle, no script, just thought raw and a little civil. Every question's got layers, so we peel back facts. From the real to the surreal, we don't hold back. Voices collide where ideas ignite. You tuned in, now step into the fight. This is more than